Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Araceli, aka Chelly, and today on Chelly's Mental Wealth, I'm going to be interviewing Edwin Soto.
Yes, hello everyone.
Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I've met Edwin through the Latinx Therapy podcast. We connected through there, and he actually went and asked a question, and it was really very powerful in regards to like your community. I was really drawn to Edwin because I think that it's inspiring to see that there's people out there that are willing to speak out and advocate for things that need to change. So I'm so happy that you're here with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
I know, me too. So just to let you guys know, I will be making a Spanish speaking one too, so that hopefully you guys can share it and we can have these conversations more often, and we can help with breaking stigmatism overall within every community within mental wealth, okay? So my first question for Edwin is, what is it that you feel like I was drawn to you? Like, because you know how we're talking about passions and stuff? Like, what is it that you're passionate about in regards to like advocating?
Yeah, I'm passionate about a lot of things. I do believe that a lot of my advocacy is very intersectional. You know, I don't believe that my activism is solely on for communities that I am part of, but also the communities that I've been surrounded with, and other communities that are minorities, and communities that are very disfranchised and disadvantaged when it comes to our society. I consider myself part of the Latinx community, part of the queer LGBTQ community. I also am undocumented, so a lot of my activism lately has been for the undocumented community and for the immigrant community. Sometimes when we think about the undocumented community, we only think about Latinx people or the Spanish-speaking people, when in fact a lot of the immigrant community is worldwide. So that's something that one of the stigmas that I've been trying to break within my activism and the organizing work that I do with a lot of my friends. But what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about just seeing people, move forward together. That when one of us succeeds, that we're all succeeding. When one of us has an opportunity, that we make sure that we bring people to succeed with us, and we bring us to move forward together. And not just for one of our communities or the communities that we are part of, but as people as a whole. Because when we succeed together, when one of us succeeds, we're succeeding together.
Exactly, yeah. And it's interesting because when you say those things, it kind of reminds me, I may sound corny, but like it reminds me of like Cesar Chavez, like how he did the whole, like just walking, and everybody just came together and supported him, and it was such a huge impact for that community in regards to just asking for better laws and not allowing for immigrants to be part of that workforce and getting taken advantage of. So
labor movement.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like it's interesting that you're saying that, because I completely agree with you. I think that when we work together, it does wonders, and we're also just modeling for the newer generation that being together is better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like
that's something that we learn from one another.
Yes.
We do need to take the time to be able to learn of our peers, the people that we're surrounded with, because the more that we decide to learn and the more that we ask questions, that's when we are able to become more aware of where people come from, what their ideologies, how their backgrounds, their ideologies, the way that they were raised really defines who they are and their approach in life. We all have different approaches, different ways to see. We're just talking about our horoscopes and how some of us are intuitive, some are more judgmental, and that in itself, when we ask people questions and who they are, and we really take the time to learn who we are as people, and be able to see the differences, but also see how we could go ahead and mend and mitigate those differences to be able to work together. And it's really helped with respect to like the mental my journey through like mental health and mental awareness.
Exactly, because I think that the same approach I know that I've taken, at least within my position, because a lot of the times we come from different backgrounds. We're all kind of doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
In the mental health professional, we all have different types of childhoods, and we have to be mindful of like, okay, this person might have gone through something different, and maybe I need to communicate this way. But if we're more empathetic and understanding, then that's when we can come together and work together better as a team and serve our consumer, so that we can help them with their goals. So it kind of falls into everything. Like I've noticed that me doing that, and then transferring that perception in my personal life has been great.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like better.
It's just mind blowing. You know, I think when like the question that I asked at the Latinx Therapy 1-year celebration was to do with they were talking about when God and therapy are okay. I grew up in a very conservative Christian household, and for us it was like, you know, therapy is for crazy people. It's people who are insane. And to me, that was the ideology I had. That was what I thought then, that people that went to therapy was because they either tried to commit suicide, they did something like they were like behaving badly in school or in work, or like, you know, they come from like a very like broken household. And that was the mentality that I had, and I didn't really do my part in research or to understand what mental health is, or what or why I needed it, or why we need it. And so to me, it wasn't until my friends started telling me, like, you know, you should really consider going to therapy. Until I started researching and really wanting to understand, like, do I need therapy? Why do I need therapy? Like, what are the results of therapy?
Because you're already thinking like something's wrong with me then.
Absolutely.
And then also too, I know that a lot of the times when we don't like to ask for help and we want to be resilient and we want to do everything on our own, it's so hard to even consider a therapist to tell you something.
Absolutely.
It's scary. It's like, how am I gonna let this person guide me?
And it's a complete stranger too, to be honest. And finding a therapist, it's something that's very, very hard, because you're trying to find someone that you could be completely vulnerable with. And you know, you really and that was something that I was very, very intentional about doing. You know, I'm not sure if I'm getting ahead of the game, but you know, but yes, being passionate and, like, you know, being aware of who you're dealing with, who you're interacting with, the relationships that you build, whether it's with your colleagues, with your, you know, with teachers, with professors, with managers and people. I mean, we have to navigate and understand people on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes it's very draining.
It is.
It's very draining to like try to like understand, and that's who I am. I try to analyze people. I try to see how they are. Like, if I say something, how do they respond when we're in a meeting at work? Like, I overanalyze people, and I sometimes I'm that person's like, did I do this right? What did he or she mean by saying this? What did they mean by, you know, when they did this, or when they raised their voice? Like, and I'm asking people, like, thinking that like I probably did something wrong, and in fact it's not so much. It's just really understanding that some other people have different approaches in speaking and walking and in approaching people, and it's really of us trying to not overanalyze it, but understand that not everybody's going to be like us.
Yes, that's so true. And then also too, realizing like, that not everybody's going to be like us, and we need to understand that it's not about us. Mm-hmm. Like, we always think like, and I think it's so funny because I went through, and I know that I go through this sometimes, is when I went to high school, I used to judge a lot. And I think that when you tend to judge, like you overanalyze, you think other people are analyzing you too, and judging, because you're constantly doing it. So you're like, why wouldn't somebody else be doing it to me? And I think so. I honestly, and as through my journey, I realized that on my own, like, okay, so it's because of this I'm doing this, so I need to stop and nip it in the butt. And it just being that's something that I've learned in the field is with behaviors, you know, and like when we do that a lot, because anxiety, that's a lot. It's our anxiety. It's very anxiety driven when we overanalyze, because to me, I feel like it's exhausting when we overthink it.
We spend a lot of energy,
like too much energy. Like, and I think like it's important that we talk about this too, because with social media, or even just having your phone, you have access to it all the time. So it's so easy for you to just overanalyze everything that you're seeing. So just be mindful and making sure that you're not doing those behaviors outside of social media or out of your phone, so that you don't transfer it over to doing it here, because it will cause stress. It causes a lot of stress.
Sometimes we like do it. You know, I used to do it. I mean, honestly, it wasn't until I went to therapy that I really found out what triggers me.
Yeah, me too.
And it was those moments in therapy that I was like,
I know, you're mind blown, right? You're like,
and
epiphany.
Yeah, and it's not even like your therapist telling you, well, this is what triggers you.
Yeah.
It's like they ask you like a series of questions, and like as they go ahead and navigate, you know, like what, like during our conversation, I've been the one that I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's it. And my therapist is just like, yeah. And those are like the best moments, because then that's when I'm like, oh, it's been me all the time. And it's like, you know,
it is a lot of the time.
And sometimes we think it's like these people, they're out to get us. And I think it's a lot of us having my mom and my dad, mostly my mom, really taught me to challenge myself and to be the best that I could be. And for me, when she said that, it was me trying to be not only the best I could be, but also be the best above all.
Oh, wow.
And so to me, everything seemed to be a competition. Everything seemed to be like, everybody's out to get me, so I'm gonna make sure that I'm out to get them and be the top in anything, whether it was in school, whether it was in church, whether it was in my household, everything. And that really, like you say, like it just comes and bites us in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
It comes and bites us, because then that's when like our relationships start becoming worse. Like it's just, it really,
we self-sabotage.
we do self-sabotage. That is literally what my therapist told me.
Self-sabotage.
And my therapist asked me, why do you like to self-sabotage yourself? And I'm
I don't know
like,
if it's a Latino thing, because I feel like I self-sabotage a lot. I really do too. Even, I mean, I don't know how good you do with compliments. Do you do good with compliments? Like when someone tells you something like, oh, thanks, you know, you'll be like, yeah, I did it. Or maybe you do, because you say you like to be competitive.
I do.
And
you know, it's something interesting that like I told my therapist that because I'm very competitive, it was because whenever I do get praised, that is like my security. That is me. That is my
validation. You're getting validated.
Yeah, that is my validation, and that is my my self-conscious. My self-conscious is based on the validation of people. And whenever I am not, when there is like a point in time when there is no validation in my life, that's when I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's when my anxiety starts kicking in. That's when I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, am I valuable? Like, is my life valuable? Am I doing something right?
No one's praising me.
Yeah. And so that's when, like, you know, that is when my therapist is like, well, those are the moments where you have to validate yourself. Those are the moments where you have to go ahead and tell yourself. Yeah. And I saw this post, you know, social media works well sometimes, and it's for us to be able to get the good things and like kick out the bad things. There was a post that said, you know, that like you plan ahead, and like what's your next step? You know, like what is your next step? What is your next goal? And sometimes we're in the thought process of like, what is going to be my next goal? What is going to be my next achievement? Where in reality, we're right in the middle of what our goal was 2 years ago. And we're so like we're not focused on that we are right where we wanted to be 2-3 years ago, which is it's already an achievement. And we don't, as Latinos, as Latinx, as Latinas, we don't learn how to celebrate ourselves.
I know, like I think it's because we're always fucking working.
Yeah, and we're like party people, you know. We party it up for anything and everything. Like, it's like, but we don't know how to celebrate ourselves. We don't know how to. We're not taught to take the time to like. I deserve a mental health day. I deserve a day where I'm gonna be happy, where I'm gonna treat myself. Sometimes we say like, oh, we're gonna treat myself. Sometimes we think about it monetary wise or physically, like physical stuff. But sometimes we need time to just like go away from people, and that's something that I'm not good at.
Like actually isolating yourself in solitude, which is good. You're going to challenge yourself once you do it more and more. Yes, and that's something that I've definitely been challenging myself. You know, my therapist is like, well, if you don't like it, it's something that's good for you. You should really try it little by little. You know, I hate going to eat alone. I hate it. The first time I had to eat alone was in college in Chicago at a Subway, and I started crying. Because I was raised with all 13 of my cousins. And so for me, like, especially eating at a restaurant, like eating anywhere, it's so sad for me to eat alone or just to be alone. And so that's something that I've really had to learn little by little, to be alone and to accept that being alone
is therapeutic. It's good for you because that's when you really start processing. It's like, well, sometimes you like start processing things that are like, oh, my life is so bad. But it's really those moments that we really have to like take over our state of mind and say, where am I in life? How well? The fact that we're surviving and that we're minorities, that in itself is already a resistance. It is a revolution. It is something good that we're doing because we have to go through so many things. You know, I, as a gay man of color who's undocumented, man, I have to like applaud myself. I have to really tell myself, like, Edwin, you should be so proud of yourself, of where you are in life. And sometimes I don't take that. Sometimes we as Latinx people, as minorities, we're not taught to do that. Because we're so focused on like you have to work harder than the other person because you're a minority. You have to do 3, 4 times, 5 times what the average white folks is doing because you're a minority. And sometimes we're so focused and that's become so ingrained in us that it really takes a toll of our mental health.
It does because it's like if we're not being our own cheerleader, then that's when I've noticed that. Like if
we have to be our number one cheerleader. Like, you know, it's something that I've said before. It's like I am my number one critic and I'm my worst critic.
Me too.
I'm gonna do everything to make sure that I feel like the worst person in the world to make sure that I go and like do better and better and better. Or I'm always like tell myself, Edwin, you could have done this better, you could have done this better, XYZ. But I'm also have to like I had to learn to tell myself, dang, Edwin, you did that. Like you motherfucking did that. Like you did that and you did this, you did that, you did this. Because if we don't do it, then sometimes we shouldn't expect it from other people. Even our parents, our best friends, our colleagues and stuff. It's really for us to be able to understand that the fact that we are living and that we are navigating the world and that we're alive, that in itself, it's a resistance, it's a challenge, and we are beating it. Like we're beating the odds. And it's so important for us to do that.
Exactly. I completely agree with you. It's interesting because I think maybe because we were never really taught to praise we never saw our parents praise their own selves. They didn't have time. That's true.
They were so busy, and we gotta acknowledge that our parents are champions. They are warriors. They are badass folks.
I mean, they literally came over here thinking that I don't know if some people thought that they didn't have to, the traditions where we're used to just the man and the woman. And I know that mostly everybody who's migrated here, both of them have to work. Very, very few people or families, one worked and one stayed at home. But I know that was still difficult for the stay-at-home mom.
Oh, absolutely.
Very difficult because, it's like they're at home and maybe they want to do more and they can't because of the circumstances. And back years ago, I think it was a lot harder. I think it's a little bit more easier now in a sense of like trying to get a job, even though if you're undocumented, but it's difficult because then you have to worry about all these other external things that's been going on. I really wanted to talk about like your experience in regards to like Christianity and being gay and like your mental like health journey in that sense.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you for asking. I think that is something that is so important. One of the things that I always remembered as a kid was growing up in a very conservative Christian household, and not only conservative, but like in a Latinx conservative Christian household. We Latinx folks, we take things by heart, and religion plays a very, very important part in our homes. I said it at the first year anniversary of Latinx Therapy that sometimes our spiritual beliefs and our religious beliefs make up the core of our households. Our parents could be beating each other up and like fighting every day, but because religion says that divorce is bad, they're gonna stay together. Whether it's like challenging them, and for me, I grew up knowing that being gay, being queer, and would condemn me like in the spiritual life, that I will go to hell. And so that took a toll on me. Like that is something that really hurt me mentally and spiritually on a day-to-day life. I when I was 12 years old, my parents were going through a split. They were splitting up, and to me, I was like, navigating the fact that like in middle school, kids, I would go to school and kids would make fun of me because I've never been like the most masculine dude ever. Like I have all girl cousins. All my cousins are girls. I have 12 girl cousins and I'm the only boy. So there was nowhere in hell that I was gonna have any masculine tendencies. I'm very feminine, very, you know, the way that I approach things is very like sensitive, very like loving, something that like men are not used to. Like we're not used to seeing in men.
Yeah.
And so I went to a predominantly minority school and kids would make fun of me, and that was hurtful. Like and to me, not only did I have to navigate the fact that I was challenging myself and telling myself that like I need to become straight, I need to be more manly, I need to be more tough. I was going to school and there was kids that were making fun of me, and on top of that I had my parents splitting up. So me hurting, like the church and going to church really hurt me in the way, in the fact that I had church leaders and spiritual leaders, the pastor's wife, my youth leaders telling, like they would preach about like homosexuality, like it was like the worst thing in the world.
No, it hurts my feelings because I've gone to a few, and when I'm there, like it's like, oh, like it hurts me.
Yeah,
it hurts me to hear it, and it doesn't make it inviting for me. Even though I'm not gay, I still it hurts me.
And can you imagine being a kid who's growing up and who's like hearing that every weekend? That itself, I remember I would pray, I would fast, I would stay till like the night services, which would like start at 11 p.m. and or into like 2-3 in the morning. And I would pray and I would ask God, please make me straight, like thinking that like God would like just like suddenly like do like a wand and like, you know, and that was hurtful. It really took a toll. Like I tried to commit suicide 3 times, like you know, and it's not something to laugh about, but it's like the reality of it, like, you know, the toll that it takes on kids, on young kids who know from a very young age that they are gay or they're queer or they're questioning their sexuality, because sexuality is something that is hard to navigate. You know, I believe even as an adult, because sexuality and sexuality is very fluid, even as adult men and adult women, they question their sexuality. Like, you know, like sex is something that you like, it's so hard to understand even as adults. And can you imagine even like for a kid to understand, like, man, I'm fighting these feelings, I'm fighting my beliefs, but I love God and I love Jesus and I believe everything that is being taught to me. That was hard.
It's very mind-fudging.
It's confusing.
It's
very confusing, because to me, I was like, I know what I'm feeling, but I'm fighting it off. Like
you're suppressing it.
Oh my gosh, suppressing it completely. And you know, I went through a phase where like I in order to hide and like to suppress it even more, you know, I was like organizing with, I was like leading worship at church. I was like dating girls, and like I was like flirting with girls, and I'm like, oh, these feelings are so confusing. Like I don't even know what to believe. It's like the most awkward thing. I know,
it's like you had to act.
I had to act, and I wasn't good at acting.
Of course.
I like when I came out to my friends, were like, dude, we knew. Which honestly was like a lot better than someone saying like, right? We would have never thought. To me, I was like, I know. You know, because it's so much, I just couldn't, I try to act it out, and some people like thought like, you know, oh gosh, we could have sworn you were gay, but like you were like out here, like, you know, in high school I was like with my friends, I was leading like the Christian club, and we were out there like talking about the gospel and stuff, which I don't regret. Like the gospel is beautiful and God's love is so beautiful, but it really took after like, you know, after like an experience at church, that like I had to come into full circle and really understand like what I wanted for my life, whether I wanted to keep suppressing these feelings and really feel that God hated me, or either I accept or I bring in the word of God into my life and say, God is love and he's gonna love me no matter what. and really accept that love and embrace that same love that God embraces me with, and love me that's with that love. And
My video ran out, so I'm so sorry that Edwin got cut off during a super great speech. I mean, it was amazing. He was saying about how God is love.
Yeah,
and that's what
absolutely.
helped you kind of.
That really, me coming to terms in that reality, and that if God loves me enough to accept me completely who I as who I am, it should mean that I get to accept myself exactly how I am and who I am, and I don't need to care whoever else. Well, yes, I wanted to my mom and my grandma to love me,
Yes.
you know. And so that same love and that passionate love that I felt, and that passionate love that my parents taught me, that's really what drove me to come out to my mom and come out to my family, come out to my friends, because I knew that those who really knew what the love of God was, those were going to be the ones that were going to love me and accept me in that same way. Yeah.
So I did want to ask Edwin, like, how he overcame the suicidal thoughts. So hopefully by him sharing his story can help someone else. What is it that was your breaking point?
Yeah. You know, it was when I was 12 years old, when my parents were splitting up.
It's very common.
Yeah, it was when I was 12 years old, where I was going to school and I was getting made fun of, and I was coming home and my parents were fighting to split. They were splitting up. That's when I attempted suicide 3 times, and it was really me trying to like navigate different ideas of like how I was gonna suicide. I had a rope. I was gonna hang it myself in a closet, and and I speak of it with full clarity because this is what we have to go through, and I hope that folks who hear this know that they're not alone. What I wish I would have done is I would have talked to someone and told them I have these suicidal thoughts, where I suppressed them. But I knew that at that point in time in my life I was very mature in the way that I thought, and I was also scared because religion really has this thought process of really controlling your mind, where I was like, if I commit suicide, I'm going to go to hell and I'm going to burn in hell for all eternity, and I don't want that. I knew that if I did that, my parents were going to be the ones that were going to suffer.
That's true, and they have
that my
idea
my
that
family
yeah.
family were going to be the ones that were going to suffer and stuff like that. And I would have wished that at that time I knew that I could have talked to someone, and not someone in church, outside of church, because I knew that there was going to be people in church that were going to pray for me and were going to love me, but prayer sometimes is not enough. Sometimes it's someone going to someone who is professionally equipped, people who have the capacity, whether it's a counselor at school, whether it's a hotline. Now we have a hotline that probably existed back then, but we weren't aware of. And so to me, I really wish that I would have reached out to someone, because that would have probably helped. But in reality, what helped me at that moment was me telling God, like, God, I'm gonna give you one last chance. Like, if I needed to like challenge God, But
well, he's been challenging you.
Yeah,
you
but
feel
like
he's been
yes,
he is. So
absolutely.
I understand
and
that.
so to me, it was like me challenging God, like telling God, like, I'm gonna give you one last chance. And I went to church. I had this whole like spiritual.
But subconsciously, you gave yourself one last chance.
Oh yes,
that's what it meant.
That's what it was. I was afraid of taking my life away. That is a scary thought. I mean, you have to be in a very, very, very isolated, very dark position to go through with it, and it's a hurtful feeling to go through. And when I think of like my colleagues or my friends who have gone through that and who actually committed suicide, like, I knew the position that they were in, but I know that they probably weren't even in a darker position. And it's a sad feeling. It's a very, very horrible feeling that I don't wish it upon anybody. But one thing that I will say, I really wish I had someone to talk to, and there was. There was plenty of people to talk to, but I didn't take that step. And sometimes you don't know how to take that step, because saying that you wanted to commit suicide or that you want to commit suicide, that is something hard to even say.
I know, it is. Because when I went through my stuff and I went through the whole cutting thing, like, I kept it all to myself.
Yeah.
I was so scared that they were going to take me away from my parents. So I didn't say anything. And what sucked is that I still continued to do that coping skill, I think up until the age of like from what I remember, I think it was like 25, 24.
Wow.
So it was not that long. I mean, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, and honestly, I think it's my position, because I've been in my position for 3 or 4 years. So I feel like me being exposed and seeing all the stuff that I see, I realize like, okay, I can't be using this as a coping skill. This is a negative coping skill that I need to undo and replace it with something more healthier.
Yeah.
That's actually gonna help me just persevere with my thoughts and just coping with anything that hits me my way, because every time something bad would happen, that was my thing. It was just like, just how when people tend to use alcohol, it's the same thing. It's like, you know what, I feel like, let me go drink. Let me take a little
sippy.
It's
like lose the thoughts.
Yeah, let me lose the thoughts.
Where really the thoughts come back.
They do.
And it's really, and that's when I really wish about like therapy was available at the time. You know, being undocumented, that's another thing that I had to navigate to. Yeah. The fact that I had no insurance, I had no way to like pay my parents. My mom was a single mom then after that. So I wasn't going to give the burden to my mom to like have to pay for a therapist, or, you know, again, like you said, like be taken away from my mom because she's not giving me the mental health that
like what are you doing wrong?
Yeah.
Like what?
And sometimes, you know, sometimes the system like blames it on them. Like if like our parents had the access to mental health, you know, and that's,
a lot of it is cultural.
It's very cultural.
Very cultural.
And so to me, it was a very hard thing to navigate, and I don't, as a queer Christian young boy, it was really hard. It was really hard to hear God is love, but God hates you because you're queer, you're gay. So it's really, like you said, it was a confusing state of mind, especially growing up in those prime years where you're developing into the person that you are. And thankfully, I didn't become a hateful person, you know?
Because it's very easily.
Sometimes people like completely compress themselves and they become people who are just so bitter and so mean, and because they completely suppress themselves. And a lot of times, you know, young kids, like like youth, queer kids, they run away from home, or they're kicked away from home, or they go to drugs and alcohol at a very young age to suppress those feelings. Thankfully, I didn't have that. I will say that religion and my spiritual beliefs did help me during those times as well, because me praying to God, and that's something that my therapist says, like, well, that's very weird and very confusing. It's definitely something very, even though it was the factor that was hurting me, it was also what was giving me strength and pushing me forward. It was like, God, I love you, and I know that you're there for me, and I know that if my parents are splitting up, you're there for me. It was really at church, because I went to a very small church that was like less than like 200 members, and everybody was like family. So like everybody knew like all the chismes, everybody knew, and it was like a Spanish speaking church too. So like, you know, like everybody knows the chismes, everybody talks about one another, but everybody also loves you and supports you. And this church, I was going there for a little bit over 20 years. And so they saw me grow up. They saw me when my parents were splitting up. And like, so they really became my tias, my tios, my abuelas and stuff, you know, my extended family that was really supporting me and loving me, and that they were there for me, and that they knew when I was crying, they came and hugged me and loved me. And it was church really, it was like the place where I was able to cry, where I was able to yell out to God and tell God like wholeheartedly, I love you, God, I love you, Jesus. But it was also the parts where like I was like, oh, gosh, it was so hard for me to like not want to be who I really was, you know? And it was hard, but it was my sort of a place of refuge for me.
So you would say like just the because I can understand what you're saying. So because of the fact that all the positive things that religion and God that was being taught to you as a child actually helped you in your weakest moments, even though it's kind of weird. It's kind of like it was like your kryptonite. It was like weird.
Yes.
It's like you're good, but it was like bad, and it was
absolutely. It was hard because I had to hear the really hard. And you know, I became a very outspoken person because my mom always told me like, you challenge things. Like whatever you're told, whatever you're taught, you go and you go read the Bible yourself, and you're gonna go and you're gonna ask God to give you what that means, or what that, like, ask God's spirit to like reveal it to you. And so I became that like preguntón, you know. I was and why is this? And my mom would tell me like, go in and read it and ask God.
Interesting.
You know,
I had a different experience.
Really?
Yeah, like with me it was more about, I would say why. too, because it was more Catholic. I was raised in a Catholic church, so I would go into the catechisms, the classes, and they would teach you all these things, and I would always ask, why? Why, Mom? I don't get these stories. They don't make sense to me. It was weird for me. For me, it was different. Like, I was like, this doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
and I don't know, because Catholics, it might be different the way they perceive the stories or they say it. Because I know, like, with Catholics, we have the Virgin.
Yeah.
And the Christians don't. So I don't know if maybe that's what was kind of like, it was going like this. And what my mom would do, she would just say, you don't question it. And that's it.
Yeah.
And so that made me rebel.
Yes.
Pushed me away.
I had a lot of my friends whose parents were like that, whose parents were the leaders in church. I mean, my parents were like leaders in church too. Like, my dad was a deacon, my mom would lead worship too. But I did see like the approach that my parents had was more of like, you question it. You question it, and it's okay to question it, because by you questioning it, you're gonna learn. And it wasn't, and a lot of other of like my friends at church growing up, their parents were like, because the Bible says so.
Yeah.
And because you don't question
pushes
it.
people away,
And I'm like, dang, like when I would see like my friends' parents tell them that, I'm like, gosh, like why do they say that? Like the Bible's not to be like, because it is like that. It's like, the Bible says that it's for it to reveal truth, you know. And that's why my mom told me, it's like, whenever you need, and if you're confused, pray to God, and you read. I hate reading, but to me, like, the Bible is such like, but I love history too. Like, there's different areas, like different parts of the Bible that connect, and to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I found why, like, this is the reason why, you know. But I never found the reason why God would hate me because I was gay.
You see? Yeah. And you know what? I keep me listening to you, and and like just being exposed by behaviors and trying to understand why, you know, people might be aggressive or defiant or depressed or anxious. I realize that a lot of it has to do with us wanting to belong.
Absolutely.
We want to belong to a group, and when we don't, we tend to like we self-sabotage. We hate ourselves for not. And it's so interesting, because think about it. You're moving over here. Now you're not really part of a group. You're in a more minority. We're considered a minority just because we're transferring over here and we don't have papers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, you're figuring yourself out, and then you're realizing, I like boys. You know, and then you're still feeling like you're not part of a group, or you can't even be part of that group because this group doesn't accept it. It's like very group related that I've noticed that we tend to do that a lot.
And we Latinx folks are very communal.
Yes.
We are community driven. I mean, I love our cultura. I love that we are very community focused, that even people who are not Latinx folks, we make them feel like family. You know, I would bring friends from, like, I would bring Black friends, I would bring Asian friends, and my grandma would make them tacos, and they're like, my grandma cannot speak an ounce of English, but here's like, eat, you know. And like, toma, like, eat, like, more, like the words that she could say, like, she would go ahead and make sure that my friends would be felt as family. And like you said, we come to this country, all we know is we come from broken countries, from like war, like developing countries and stuff like that. And so all we want is to be able to find a community, and church was that. Church is that for a lot of low income, underprivileged Latinx folks, even for other like minorities, like, you know, Islamic people, Muslims, that like people in the Middle East, they come, and sometimes the religion is all we have, and so we come into these spaces that become our family members, that become our communities. And it is these communities, and because we want to maintain that community and we don't want to be removed from that community, our parents become these sort of like, I mean, religion really controls your mind. It really messes you up, because our family members wanted to be part of that community so much that they did not want to like sway from one way to another. I mean, the church that we used to go to before this one, they wouldn't let me wear pants. They wouldn't let women wear makeup. They couldn't cut their hair. Like, you could have had, like, you know, your hair looking like a freaking bush, and they told you cannot cut it because that is sinful. You cannot wear makeup because it's sinful. You cannot wear earrings or all these things because it's sinful. Women cannot wear pants because it's meant for men. I was like, yes, you really think that a little like a pants with a bunch of flowers and like little like jewels and stuff, that is gonna be for for men. I mean,
men, yeah.
sociological, like just like in our society, it's gonna be meant for men. Okay,
Yeah.
you know. So I question these things from a very young
know.
age, and I'm like, gosh, like this whole like gender binary thing is crazy. But again, it wasn't until I went to therapy that I started going to therapy that I really had to put myself in my parents' position and really understand, like why my parents were like that, why people at church were like that. And I was like, dang, they're also struggling to belong. And because of that, that really drives their way of thinking, their approach. And like the way that they punished us, because sometimes they punished like I love going to church, but like my friends that didn't, like their parents would punish them because they're like, if you don't go to church this Sunday, you're not gonna do this. We're gonna take your video games away. We're gonna take your X, Y, and thing away. You know, I'm like, church should not be like the factor for punishment, because then you start making kids hate church.
Yeah, right. And I think that's what I know. That wasn't my mom's intention, but I think that it's funny because I spoke to my mom just recently about how we do that because, and we don't say anything. And I told her, I was like, Mom, I want to change things in our culture. I want us to talk about things, like not just about each other. Because you know how we like to chismear and we're like, oh, mira, di. But actually talk to each other and say, hey, ¿por qué hiciste eso? Me enojé. And it's so hard for us to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how it is in your family, but I know it's difficult for us to even have this type of conversation.
Yeah.
Like it's very
and
fulfilling.
civilized
like,
too. Sometimes we start yelling in my family. We start yelling, and
we're
it's
debating.
like we have to like up one another. So I'm gonna yell out even louder, and it's like sometimes I'm like, why is everybody yelling? Oh my gosh! But then I'm the one that's yelling too. Like I am yelling louder than my mom, and you know, honestly, that stopped after I started going to therapy because my therapist told me. Like, it was like, you know, we started like learning about like our triggers and stuff. And we it's really when with my therapist, we found out that I'm like, oh my gosh, tone of voice is one of my triggers.
Yeah, it is.
Dealing with in customer service and all that stuff, it's like, as soon as like I heard someone's like tone of voice, a tone of voice that wasn't pleasant to me, like to me, I automatically thought, this person's out to get me. And I'm going to treat them worse because I'm going to up them. Yeah. And therapy really helped that for me. You know, it's really not until I sought therapy and I really started researching that really allowed me to come to terms to understand how I had all these traumatic events who shaped me as a person, but that's also all these traumas that I had to endure really, really did not build me to be the best person I could be. And it wasn't until I really understood my triggers and understood where these trauma or like how these traumatic events are like these traumas, because traumas, it doesn't have to be traumatic events. Yeah. They could be ongoing events that really created the person that I was. And sometimes it became this like mean person, I know not the best person I could be. And it really helped me see like, oh my gosh, this is a trigger. Edwin, calm down. Calmate. You don't have to up them. You don't have to like assume that they're out to get you. Yeah. And
I'm the same way.
That really helped.
It's so weird because it's my family's always like, why do you always think people are out to get you? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's because of where we live, what we went through. I always think people are out to get me. And but the thing is, I have gotten taken advantage of a couple of times while growing up. But because I was just such a nice person and also too very caged in that people knew that I didn't know any better. So I feel like it's part of the trauma of me thinking, okay, this happened to me, but give people chances, you know, like let people show you if that really is the case, and if it's not, and if it is what you thought it was, and now you know, and move on, and that's it.
Yeah,
you know?
And we really learned from it. And I really encourage folks to go to therapy or to find therapy because it's life changing. Honestly, I cry almost every single time I'm out of therapy because it's really these moments of realization. I'm like, oh, I don't wish to be this person, but it's not that we're mean people and we're not bad people. It's not that.
But we're
human.
The
fact we're human. Absolutely. Yes, we are human and we're not robots. And it's not until we go to therapy and we really find these we link things
Yeah,
up.
we do. We link things up.
And I think that was one of the most phenomenal things that I discovered about therapy. And that's why I love going to therapy, because I'm like, I want to learn more about different things. I learned that I am exactly how my grandma is. Things that my grandma does that I hate, there was a moment where I'm like, I am my grandma. Oh my gosh, I am my grandma. I do things exactly like my grandma. I am emotional like my grandma. I like the attention like my grandma. And my therapist was like, and it's things like that you really have to become vulnerable and like sometimes really go and seek these therapy sessions, or like someone that you can become as not just someone who is trained and licensed who could help you, because those are the moments that you really it helps you better yourself. It helps you become a better person.
Yeah, yeah. And I also want to remind everybody that the diagnosis or the label that they might give you doesn't mean anything. I know some people get really scared to go seek a therapist because of the label, and I want people to understand that label or that diagnosis is just there to bill the service, because in order for them to bill it and charge you, they have to justify why you're receiving services. Sadly, that's the way the system works. We can't change it. I wish that therapy should just be a universal thing, like they've always said. Like, it should just be part of health.
Absolutely.
Talking to someone once a year and figuring out what happened that year, your triggers, new triggers, because new triggers come out all the time.
Oh yeah,
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
Like for me, I've noticed my validation is a new trigger for me. When I don't feel validated, it's big for me. But I know that it's because I don't get validated in other relationships in my personal life. So when I see it in social media, it's like I get butthurt, and I realize like no, it's this aparato, this thing should not give me the validation.
Absolutely.
I need to validate myself, or try to communicate to the person and say, I'm not feeling validated, this is what's going on, let's fix it.
Yeah, and like you said, I think it's something so important that you said, is that we're always developing and we're always growing and we're always encountering new situations. So as we navigate different phases of our life, we navigate new and encounter new situations that really, to me, like now that I'm entering like the professional world, I am trying to understand hierarchies. And it wasn't until that's another one of my triggers. It's like I don't do well with labels and hierarchy, and that's something that was very, very important for me to understand, how not to necessarily be okay with them, but how to accept them as a professional in the professional world. And so yes, it's something that we do need it, and it's really also about finding a therapist that really understands you, because to me, and I'm going to be completely transparent, my job could pay for my therapist. And we have a really a good plan that pays for our therapist, or pays for and I pay a very small copay, but the directory was hella white.
Yeah, it is. Usually
so white. And to me, I could not find a therapist that was queer, that was Latinx, and that would hopefully understand being undocumented. And it wasn't until, Adri put together this directory of Latinx therapists, and I found someone who deals specifically with queer Latinx folks. And on top of that, they were also undocumented, and so to me, they understand the different aspects. So to me, that me being able to speak to my therapist just makes me even more vulnerable, and they understand. And they're not using all these methods that therapy, sometimes they're made to work for rich white folk. And they don't really work for Latinx people who grew up in poverty. And so it's really for us to be able to change that system, and to change that perspective, and to be able to change how can we come into this field, or be clients and be the recipients of this field, and change it for other folks in our communities to be able to go and seek help.
And it's interesting because I know that me working in the nonprofit, there's I'm one of the very few Latin speaking employees. So there's a lot of that cultural barrier where even, you know, I have to educate, or I have to remind, or I have to like, oh well, this is a cultural thing, you know, and I just have to be mindful that they don't understand, and then I just have to kind of figure out ways where I can communicate where they're not going to get offended, but understand, so that we can help our clients to the best of their abilities. Because sadly enough, with nonprofits or with medical, like, you're forced. You're assigned to whoever you want, and it's hard even for I know of therapists that are Latinx that they've also had been discriminated by our own. Where they're like, do you know about this? Do you know about that? Do you know about this? And she didn't, and so it was very, very anxious for her. She was just like, she didn't know. She's like, what do you want me? And she was very empathetic towards the person, and she tried to really figure out ways where she could support to the best of her abilities, but it just didn't work. And it was tough for her because she wanted to help. That's why I'm super happy that these directories exist now, because now there's options.
Yeah,
there's options now, you know.
And it's okay to like ask and speak to a therapist. It's like, do you work with this kind of people? Have you worked with people with this type of situations? Because it's for us to be able to go to someone. To me, you know, I had to like go outside of like my plan, because
I went outside of my plan because I know how Kaiser is. No offense. The only good thing about Kaiser is that they literally track everything. So if I come in, they know where I'm at. We don't need to talk about nothing. I'm there, and they know where to start and begin. But yes, the techniques are different.
They're also their approach and the methods that they use, sometimes they're gonna negate some methods. You know, and sometimes they really have to use other methods that they found in their professional work that work best with people of color, and not with people, you know, because therapy, a lot of like fields and of like social fields, like political science. You know, me going to law school, I saw how like the law was really just to like many times benefit the rich white man and not like minorities. And so it's for us to shape those and to be able to change that and to go into these fields, and absolutely go to these fields. If you're interested in going to the fields, let's go and change it, because it's also our duty as people who are already experiencing the benefits of therapy to encourage other people of color to go to them. And it's really, again, you know, like I said in the beginning of our conversation, I do a lot of advocacy and a lot of organizing. And I know that like for a lot of us who do organizing and advocacy and activism work, it's so draining. It's hard. It's like it's hard. Like mentally it's hard, emotionally it's hard, because we're dealing with a lot of people who are being, you know, disenfranchised or hurt and being negated by American government and whatnot. And so it's for us to like go out there and be on the forefront, and sometimes it's really, really hard. So for us to be able to not only be activists in like social things, but also in the mental and health fields, the fact that I'm able to go out and tell my colleagues and friends and my family, my mom, my sisters, my aunts, my tias, my abuelas, people that I know from church, go to therapy. It's okay to go to therapy. We said this, like God put and ordained people in, like gave us like, you know, the ability and the sciences to understand how like our mental behaviors. Therefore, therapy is not bad. Therapy is not something that is negated by the church or by the Bible, or it's something that's frowned upon by God. On the contrary, if God gave us the sciences to understand and the capacity to understand mental behavior, then we should go seek mental health, you know, professionals and therapy and ways for us to be able to cope and understand and be mentally healthier.
Yeah, and just to let everybody know too, there is group therapy. Some people like the group setting and they don't want to be alone with someone.
Yeah.
And if it works, try it. Because hearing other people's stories, you start to realize like, okay, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
You know?
And that also encourages people to like empowers them to like say their stories too, because all of our stories matter. All of our lives matter, and it is and I say all of our lives matter in the sense of like, you know, that all of our mental lives and our mental health matters. And therefore, it's very important for us to see it.
It is. And I'm going to ask last two questions for Edwin. My question for you is, what would you say to a person who might be 12 years old right now, dealing with the same thing that you were dealing years ago, to encourage or maybe motivate, or, you know, what would you say to them?
I love that question, Araceli. Thank you so much. I would say that you're loved. You are infinitely and relentlessly loved. If you're going to church or whether you're not going to church, there are people, there is a community that loves you, there is a God that loves you. It's okay to feel the way that you feel, but you shouldn't feel it alone. It's okay to talk with people. Talk to your school counselor, talk to whoever you feel comfortable with talking to, but you're not alone. You're not going through this alone. I went through it too, and I'm here now, and it's okay to feel that way. Your feelings are valid, but I would encourage you to definitely speak with someone. You don't need to come out of the closet. You know, you don't have to tell people I'm gay, but you could tell people I'm feeling this way. But know that you are loved. And if for any reason you feel that your family wouldn't love you, reach out to people. There's a whole community, the LGBTQ community. I felt that is very welcoming in some aspects, but whenever it deals with kids and youth and people who are feeling that way, we're welcoming, and we want you to know that we love you and that you are loved. And know that if you believe, if the church, if your pastors, if your spiritual leaders have made you feel that you're not loved, know that God does love you. Sometimes people don't know how to change things, but know that God does love you and that God loves you forever and ever. God created you. God makes no mistakes when he creates, and therefore he is not embarrassed of his creation, because you are his creation and you are beautifully and perfectly made into the person that you're meant to be. And hopefully one day you become the leader and you become the example of other kids and other people who are gonna look up to you, are gonna say, I wanna be as free and happy as that person, because you are able to be happy and you are valid and you are beautiful. You deserve to be happy.
Yeah, everybody deserves to be happy.
Yes.
And then just accept yourself.
Accept yourself. Love yourself.
Love yourself.
It's a process, and it's okay. Like I mentioned, it's okay to feel the way that you're feeling, but love yourself. Love yourself for who you are. You know, I've had to go through that. Sometimes I've had to go through the fact that I have to love my lonjitas. I have to love my man boobs. I have to love, my really high-pitched voice. My voice doesn't sound deep. But it's about accepting who you are and how you are and for who you are, because God loves you the exact way that you are. And people are going to love you when you're free, and when you accept yourself and you love yourself, that's when people are going to love you as well.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that you can take that in, filter it, and spread that message. And I know, coming from my experience with self-love, it's a journey, and I know that I've gone through times where I've said, like, well, how do you love yourself? Like, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's a process. It is
a process.
It is a
journey.
long process, and it's part of the mental wealth journey of everybody. And the last question that I have for Edwin would be, what would you say to the parent who might have a feeling that their child might be going through those changes, or feelings, and they may not be ready to say something? What would you advise or recommend, or how can you support them? Because I know it's hard sometimes. Like as a caregiver, sometimes it's hard for them, depending, because sometimes they're not ready.
I'm not going to speak on a parent behalf, because I'm not a parent, but I will say that this is what I wish my parents would have done. I wish that while I was growing up, that my parents would have sat down with me and told me that I love you no matter who you are, how you are, who you decide to love, who you decide to choose to love, or not choose to love, but like, who do you love or who you are attracted to. If there are parents who believe that their kids are queer or gay or part of the LGBTQ community, just love on them and let them know that you love them no matter what. And sometimes, because of our religious beliefs, sometimes we think like, well, I'm going to be sinning. It's like, no. The Bible says and commands parents to love their children and to not leave them astray. And so the best thing you can do, and I think what God would do, what Jesus did, is love on people. Love on their children. Jesus loved us wholeheartedly. And I believe wholeheartedly that Jesus, that's what it's going to do. Don't try to out them. Don't tell them that they need to come out of the closet, because that is not the parents' choice of when and where the kids decide to come out. But let them know that they are loved, infinitely loved, and to make their home a refuge place. Because the more you tell them that you love them, the more confident they're gonna feel that if one day they decide to come out, you might be the very first person that they come out to. They might feel confident enough to tell you, Mom, I feel this way or that way. because I think it's every parent's, fear that they might do something behind their backs and not do it in home. And I feel building a home that is full of love and that is a safe haven for them, and that they feel secure and loved enough to tell their parents at home that they feel a certain way
because they're safe there.
They're safe there.
They're feeling safe.
That is what they want. That is what parents want to build. Because I don't wish for any kid to feel the way that I did, that I put myself inside a closet literally with ropes in my hand, ready to kill myself. And so let's do the contrary of that. Tell your kids that you love them and build that safe home for them to feel confident enough that if they are, that they come out to you first, or that you're one of the first people that your kids feel that you deserve to be told that they are gay or lesbian or queer, transgender, or whatever they feel who they are. But to build their home out of love and a safe haven.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you one last, because I thought about it in my head. It's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
Because this is something that I've encountered, like, in the community, as, like, when a person feels like the person's dead. What would you say to a parent that might be feeling that way, where it's like, wow, like they told me that they're transitioning, or they told me that they're gay and they're like the same sex. I feel like they're gone.
Yeah.
Like I don't have.
Like the parents feel like their kid is dead or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like what would you?
Yeah.
How could, because I've had that a lot, and I don't even know how to help, because I've never been in a situation like that, and I don't know if you know someone that's felt that way when you came out, because it all depends on who you surround yourself with and how that person feels.
Absolutely. That is a very hard question, because
I know it's a hard question.
I didn't have to experience that, thankfully, and the parents it's a very shocking feeling. I could only imagine what it is for us, as we who had to navigate accepting our sexuality and accepting who we are. It's hard for us. I could only imagine for the parent, who in society, I guess, like if you have a boy, you think that they're gonna be
so many years,
we're thought that they're gonna grow up and have a family and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're being conditioned.
Yes, we're very conditioned. It's hard for me to say what to tell parents, but then see, like, what would you feel like if your parents told you that you were dead, and that because you chose to love a woman or a man, or because you chose to, I don't know, it's a very hard thing to say, because I don't like comparing sexuality to like being to something else, because it's very different. It's a whole thing. But reach out to your kids. I mean, we didn't choose to be who we are. Honestly, if I could have chosen to be straight over gay, sometimes when I was growing up, I would have chosen to be straight.
Less stressful for you.
Less stressful for me, less things to go. If we had a choice, I would have chosen to be straight. I mean, like, growing up. Now I love that I get to be who I am. But if it was a choice, don't you think we would have chosen to not to go with the choice that would have come with less pain?
Less pain, I know.
If it was a choice. But the fact that it is not a choice, and if you have completely removed, or you hated, or you decided to tell your kids very hurtful things, I would encourage you to think of what you've chosen and whether that was the right decision, because we didn't get a choice.
Yeah, that's true.
We didn't get a choice. We feel what we feel because that is who we are, And so I would definitely encourage parents to think about what they've said to their kids and really think on that. And if you haven't reached out to your kids, or if you haven't spoken to your kids because of their sexuality in a while, then I definitely encourage you to think about it and reach out to them and really love on them and love them how you would have want to be loved. And especially if you go to church, the word says love others like you would do unto others as you would want to be done.
The golden rule.
The golden rule.
That's the golden rule.
And that's how would you believe God would love your kid? If Jesus were to be here now. Jesus loved the prostitute when everybody was ready to just stone her. He's like, wait, the person who has not done one thing or who has never sinned, go ahead and cast that first stone. Not saying that sexuality or being queer is a sin, but if we're not perfect. And being queer and being gay is not an imperfection. That is who we are. And really just love people.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing we could do I mean, I know it sounds corny, but I really do believe, like, the Beatles song, like, all you need is love.
All you need is love.
Like, I get that now.
If we love, love comes back to us.
It does, yeah.
And you don't want to be punished by God, by, you know, sometimes like we come to be punished. Like sometimes things come back to us. We don't want that bad, you know, energy come back to us.
I know.
Because
And it does, it's real.
And it's our children, it's our kids, it's your child, it's your sobrino, it's your tia, your mother, your whoever it is that has come out. It's a human being.
Yes.
So just love on them.
Yes.
All we need is love. God is love. Yeah. It's in the first book of John, and what is it, verse 4 or like verse 8, chapter 4? God is love.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Edwin. I appreciate your honesty and all the like the valuable, you know, experiences that he shared. I really hope that you guys can, or everybody. I have to stop saying you guys because I'm really trying my best to not say you guys.
I say y'all or you.
Or like
just say you.
Like,
that's what my therapist told me.
I know,
say you.
Like, say you.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to be really mindful. And I remember when I had my client and
thank
I was
you for
so hard because we're conditioned.
Hey guys.
Hi guys. So thank you everybody for being here. And I hope if you have any questions for Edwin, you want to connect with him, get to know him, I'm going to leave his Instagram stuff down below. Reach out to him if you have any questions for support or maybe just resources. I'm sure that he would be gladly to connect with you guys or, you know.
Or for encouragement or prayer. I'm happy to pray for people. Like, I'm happy to pray for people or just give them encouraging words. Like, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm also going to be putting down because I've put down the Latinx Therapist Instagram, but I've actually never put the website. So I'm going to put it down. That's the website that he's used. I've already spoke about that website. And you guys can check it out. See if you can find someone that will motivate you to be more open about talking about what's going on.
Yeah.
And just start the process now.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Araceli.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
So we're going to do a Spanish one.
Yes.